at every point in our hiring and promotion and assignment and review processes, hidden bias trickles in. So if we think about the US context, how many of your companies use employee referrals as a way to bring in folks? You get a bonus, you refer your friend. If they get hired, okay, lots of hands there. Well, that will be really effective if you've got the diversity that you want, because you're just going to replicate it if you use employee referrals. This is a study that was done last summer by a national religious organization looking at what our social networks are. 92% of Caucasian Americans have Caucasian friends. 82% of Black Americans have Black friends. 63% of Latinos have same race ethnicity friends. So we're not going to get to diversity through employee referrals. Many of you may have seen this study that was done by two economists, one at the University of Chicago, one at MIT. They sent out resumes that had completely equivalent experiences. 2 years in this position at this company or at that company, Ivy League schools, grade point averages, everything was carefully tested to make sure that these were basically equally qualified candidates sent in to executive recruiters in Chicago and Boston for open jobs. 4 names: Lakeisha Washington, Jamal Jones, Emily Walsh, or Greg Baker at the top. Who got more callbacks? One of the authors of the study, Professor Mullainathan, who was then at MIT and is now at Harvard, his colleagues at MIT said, "Are you sure you want to do this study? Because you're going to actually document how much unfair advantage racial minorities have in the workplace now because everybody's paying attention to diversity." He said, "Look, I'm an economist. I'm going to do the research. It's going to be rigorous, and we're going to publish the results, whatever they are." Well, so I heard some of you say that you thought Greg was going to get more callbacks. How many think he's going to get 5% more? 10%? 25%? 50%? Well, the cynics are right. But it's not just Greg. There's no gender difference. Greg and Emily both get 50% callbacks, more callbacks, than Lakeisha and Jamal with identical resumes. Same thing happens when we're looking at LGBT population. 100 pairs of fictional resumes sent to government contractors. Anybody who mentions anything related to LGBT experience automatically knocked out 23% less frequently. This could even be a leadership position. This could be something like the head of the Gay-Straight Alliance on campus that doesn't even suggest that that person is necessarily gay. They might be the straight part of the alliance. Doesn't matter, knocked out. Same thing happens with respect to many kinds of characteristics. You may have seen this study within the last year. Jennifer and John both apply for a lab manager in an academic institution. Identical resumes. Jennifer is with the same resume. She's less competent, she's more likable, she's less likely to be considered worth mentoring. We're going to pay her less, of course. And the really sad thing is men and women faculty, younger and older professors, biologists, physicists, and chemists all had the same evaluation. All of our brains are wired to be biased, and I don't know about you, but I have never been able to tell likability from a resume. Here's a new one, business plan pitches. Identical business plan pitches that had already won a competition, so we knew that they were fundable, we knew some VCs had written some checks. The only difference, Some of those business plans were narrated by male voices, some were narrated by female voices. 68% of the judges chose to fund the ventures narrated by a male voice, which was more than twice as often as the same business plan already funded by VCs when it was narrated by a female voice. And here, those of you who are coming to the Girls' Lounge later or tomorrow morning for our panel, we better talk about this. The results were the same whether the judges were men or women. So what doesn't make a difference in hiring? Laszlo Bock, Google's senior VP of People Ops, mined 15 years worth of Google data to try to look at who's been successful. Let's go back to what their resumes and their hiring process looked like, and let's see if we can get some clues for the future. So you know all those brain teaser exercises? There are things like, how many golf balls fit in a 737 plane? Well, you have to know what size a 737 plane is. You got to know what size a golf ball is. Those brain teasers, you know what they're good for? Laszlo said those brain teasers have really one good outcome. They make the interviewer feel smart. So if you're having a really bad day, give somebody one of those brain teasers. You will feel better, and you will have learned nothing about whether they're going to make a good candidate. Schools are artificial environments, so performance at a school doesn't predict performance in a workplace. GPAs, test scores, those turn out not to predict who really is a great engineer at Google. We do know what does make a difference in hiring and in retention, which is also, once you get diversity in the door, how do you keep, promote, motivate them? Role models, social belonging exercises, certain changes in the physical environment, and empathy. I'm going to real quickly show you one example of each. So it turns out who's at the front of the classroom makes a huge difference for who stays in a hard class. If you're a girl taking calculus and your professor is a woman, you're going to stick it out and you're going to do fine at a much different rate than if your professor is male. A study done by some psychologists at Stanford, absolutely fascinating. They were really worried about the rates at which African American students who were first in their families to be going to college were dropping out of college. And they asked them, why? And they would say, I just don't belong here, I'm not as good as the other students. Then they figured out that if you don't know anyone who's ever gone to college, you don't know if your experience is the norm or is an outlier. So they put this 30-minute video together of students. They were freshmen, juniors, sophomores, seniors. They were all races. They were all genders. They were all majors. And they would say things like, when I got to Stanford, I thought I was going to be fine. I was the valedictorian in my high school, and then I found out everybody else was the valedictorian of their high school, and they went to way better high schools than I did. I didn't know how to make friends. I didn't know how to find a study group. I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to do my laundry. I kept getting lost. All of those things. So when you hear it from the captain of the varsity something or another team, you think, oh, that's pretty funny. That happened to me too. Okay, that's a predictable experience. That 30-minute video made a statistically significant difference in the grade point averages and graduation rates 4 years later of African American students at Stanford. Why isn't each and every one of your companies doing a 30-minute belonging video aimed at who you're having the toughest time attracting and retaining?